here. It is a cold day. Welcome to winter. I'm excited to have our speaker today, Joachim Seelos. I'm going to read you a little biography he provided to me, and then we'll hand it over to him. So Joachim was born and raised in Lafayette, Louisiana, in a Cajun Creole family with a white mother and black father. His hearing impairment was discovered at the age of 3, and he was sent to a deaf school and began learning ASL in English. He entered a Catholic seminary in the Diocese of Lafayette, Louisiana, in his early 20s with the interest of becoming a priest. After 3 years of studying, he developed a close friendship with a Benedictine monks who ran the seminary and entered St. Joseph Abbey in New Orleans. He remained a monk for several years. Deciding to leave the Abbey, he started working at an at-risk school where he was introduced to social work, trauma, and crisis intervention. He moved to Kansas City, Missouri in his early 30s and went to Park University, graduating with a criminal justice degree and a minor in social work. He began working extensively in Missouri and Kansas with homeless youths, in child protection, searching for missing youths, and in an adoption foster agency. Moving to Iowa City in 2021, he has worked as a mental health liaison, integrated with the Iowa City Police Department for over a year. Outside of work, he enjoys traveling, cooking, reading, hiking, breweries, and desserts. Welcome. I'll let you take over, Joa.
Thank you, Joanna. So let me figure this out here first. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Okay. So I'll just kind of give you a little bit of background of how my position even started in Iowa City, Iowa. Of course, we all know in 2020, George Floyd and the Black Lives Movement. George Floyd, a 46-year-old man, he died while in a mental health crisis and by the knee of a police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota on May 25th, 2020. We know that George's death, in the words of I Can't Breathe, brought immense emotions and actions, demands for change, not just in Minneapolis, but all across the country. Actions of protests occurred in 140 cities across America and 21 states activating the National Guard. Iowa City, Iowa was part of that emotional charge in bringing a change to policing. The city council, from the request of the city, adopted 16 items in order to bring changes to policing in Iowa City. And one of those items that was requested from the planned reconstruction of the police department was adding a mental health liaison position. And so Community Crisis Services and Food Bank partnered with the Iowa City Police Department, and the position was established in December of 2020. And so, you know, that's kind of how my position sort of came about in Iowa City. So my role started in July 2021. So the time that they established the position, they began interviewing and all that. And when I was hired, I started right in July 2021. So my position is funded by a grant from the Mental and Disability Services of the East Central region, and we're also with the ICPD in the city of Iowa City. So what is my position? What's the goal of it? You know, so my main goal of the position is to help divert 911 calls regarding any type of crisis away from jail or hospital to the mental health liaison. I have a work vehicle which is given to me where the mental health liaison will go and meet the officer at the scene. If it is deemed safe, which normally it is, the worker can kindly ask the officers if they can go out back into service, and they will continue to work with the individual. Mental health liaisons deal with crisis, which is unique, right? I think, if you can think of a time when you felt you were in a crisis, it's very different to everybody. And those crises that I tend to work with is suicidal ideations, even suicides that have been completed. And what I do is I go and I give support to grieving families, and even being with the body until the medical examiner comes and puts it into the vehicle. Also, I work with family mediations, psychosis, schizophrenia, depression, PTSD, homelessness, a list of any crisis that could occur with an individual. So as officers still do go out into scenes, the mental health workers have seen them do incredible work. The Iowa City, Iowa Police Department is absolutely amazing. The difference between my position and a police officer is that I don't carry a badge or gun. So what's less traumatizing, right? So we come into a high intense crisis situation, a social worker coming in there with a pen and a notepad will be very much, like I said, less traumatizing with an officer coming in with the gear and the uniform and the gun. And so it would just be easier to help to de-escalate the individual. And that's a goal that, we have when we put a social worker into a crisis situation. So once contact is made, I work with the individual to try to de-escalate, figure out what's going on, ask questions, see what, services they may need. Sometimes if they need even longer period of conversation, I'll bring in mobile crisis, but I'm pretty successful in just kind of helping to de-escalate. One of the good things is that I don't only help an individual at the moment, I also do follow-ups, and I continue the client relation in order to divert any more calls to 911. There'd be safety planning, aiding connecting individuals to resources around Iowa City and the different organizations. I continued visits or phone calls. As always, we Community Crisis Services and Food Bank, we're a voluntary program, so clients have the right to refuse assistance, but normally they're open to receiving the help and support. And I always say this too, that as a mental health liaison, I am also available for the police department and recognizing that police have their own traumas, and and giving support to them too. One thing I've learned in this job is kind of seeing through the lens of the police officer, and they also go through a lot of trauma and going from call to call to call, and sometimes they see some very traumatic things. And so, it's hard to have that time to process things when you're going to call after call. And so I always try to make myself available just to listen. So Community Crisis Services in the Iowa City Police Department, we gear to work together to support mental health and to bring clients to a place where they can make decisions that will improve their lives. And that's, another goal that I have too, is how can I help this individual to be able to make the decisions for themselves and to help them, really, like I said, improve their lives. So that's the kind of the questions that one of the questions that I always ask them is kind of like, how can I help you? And what services do you feel like you need, in order to help you? And so a lot of times, maybe at that moment they'll realize, well, I need counseling, or, my family's having a hard time with each other, family counseling, or, if they're in a situation where they're going to be evicted and, they need shelter, I work with Shelter House. Or if they're, just coming out of a detox program and they're on the streets and they need more time to figure out what to do, GuideLink is also there to help them continue to get better. there's a lot of times too where people are just having a hard time. Maybe it's feeling very suicidal, but it's not intense enough to go to the hospital. So GuideLink is also an option. And so there are times where I'm able to really help them. And of course, there's things that I can do and things that I can't do. And I always explain that to them, right? I can't drive them, out of Iowa City to wherever they need to go or whatever. And so I try to make sure that, if they want to go home and it's out of state, I try to work with the police department, with community, and we try to, if we know this is going to help them, then we try to find those connections and those organizations that would help them get to wherever they need to go. So I know that was really quick and a lot in a nutshell, but that is sort of what I basically do. It can be a challenge at times, even for myself, because I do find myself in situations sometimes where it's just like, I don't know what to say, or how can I help this individual? But you learn. I think we're all human, and I think we can all kind of get to that level of saying, I'm here, I'm present. I want to continue to be present to give you support. I know I had last week. There was a completed suicide, and I was there to help the family. And, even though sometimes grief comes in so many different forms of anger, of sadness, of questions of why, at least I can be there to just give them that support and sit with them while they mourn. And then to also, just sort of show them that, we me and the police do care about you. We want to be with you, and we will stay with the body until the medical examiner comes. Even at times explaining to families, what will happen once the medical examiner comes to help ease the stress of when they get here. And it's just those type of things. I find myself really proud of what I do, because I know that, even though sometimes I feel like I'm not making a difference, I am. And, it's really nice when people do, tell me, thank you so much for being present. I really needed that. And, we also, assist those who, are in psychosis and don't know what's going on. And, I'm able to kind of jump in and give some direction of, and helping the police of what we need to do to help the individuals. And that at times it's kind of like, hey, the EMT's here, we're going to have to get this individual to the hospital. There are times where I also will, visit clients who are in jail who just want to talk, and also, available for that. And I have in the past. Gratefully, we do have a social worker who only works in the jail now. And so it's really helpful to have that social worker to be that bridge and connection. We also just recently hired a mental health liaison as well for the 3 departments in Coralville, North Liberty, and the Sheriff's Department. And so, we are starting to kind of branch out. It is taking some time, but like everything, when you start something, it's just a process.
There's a couple of questions here.
Absolutely.
One is, how do you coordinate with the immigrant and refugee liaison? And then the other one is, what is the age range of folks you work with?
Okay. So when it comes to coordinating with the immigrant and refugee liaison, Joshua's helped me a couple of times with translations. So we've had quite a few people in Iowa City, immigrants who only speak French. And so he's helped me a couple of times to be able to translate and see what services they need and how I can help them. But that's sort of kind of the only coordination that I had with Joshua so far. When it comes to the age range that I work with, it varies. It can be from children to elderly. And the good thing about it is that we have so many organizations in Iowa City that provide services for children and teenagers, like United Youth Reaction. And then for like the elderly, we have Heritage, which Laura is absolutely amazing to work with. And so, you know, and then there's services for adults as well that I work with. So there really isn't no age limit. A crisis, anybody in crisis is in crisis, and crisis doesn't have an age limit.
There's a couple more in
Yeah.
the chat. You see them?
So I realize it's a situation dependent, but are there guidelines for what is considered safe and unsafe for you? Yes. So when I go out onto scene, I usually always let officers go first if there is a concern for any type of weapons, or even if the client is very escalated and known to, you know, have violent tendencies, then I tend to be very careful with that. But I still go right in to try to assist the client. Sometimes I'll just even have an officer just kind of wait from a distance if it's questionable or we're not sure. But you know, safety is always at the forefront. So you know, community crisis services and the police department always wants to make sure that I'm safe. And so that's always the first focus. But I would say in my position, it's been very, very rare that I have ever been in an unsafe situation. Another question: what happens if an autistic person is having a mental health crisis? So if a lot of our officers are very experienced in working with children or adults with autism, and I've witnessed it. For myself, if an autistic person is having a mental health crisis, I tend to kind of go to the families to, you know, see what's going on, what are the triggers, what are ways that they use to try to de-escalate. And I kind of try to use my own tools as well to de-escalate the situation. I know in the past, most of the autism that I've dealt with were children. Sometimes, you know, autism will, children will tend to run. And so, you know, if I run to those families, I always try to connect them with the services that we have here and in Iowa City. And I know the police department has a service. Forgive me, I can't remember the name of it, but it's where they put, you know, like kind of like watch bracelets on children, so, or even on elderly that tend to walk off. And so they're able to kind of locate where they are. So another question: do you do home warfare checks for individuals with mental health condition when family and friends can't reach out to them? Yes, so I do warfare checks, sometimes alone, sometimes with police. I tend to bring police officers with me just in case we're not getting an answer. You know, and so I just don't want to walk off, you know, just because they're not answering the door. Sometimes if they don't answer, it could be something a little more serious. If a person is having a mental health crisis and somebody's called for a welfare check, it does help when a social worker shows up at the door. We had a situation yesterday with a client who somebody called for a welfare check, and the client was very happy that a social worker showed up at the door. And I was kind of able to sit with that particular client and kind of help him process for what was happening. See, another question: how are you working with the schools? So it is rare that I will go to a school Parth Patel is kind of a social worker from community that focuses only on schools. And so that he tends to go out and help the families and individuals. Even when I'm dealing with youth, sometimes I will connect Parth because Parth may already know this individual who I'm working with in a crisis. We also have mobile crisis that will go out to schools and help individuals. I will go to the schools if the youth or child is, let's just say, having very intense suicidal ideations and they have a very direct plan. Then I will go out there myself, which, schools will tend to call 911 and the 911 dispatch will dispatch me out to the school. And so I'll go out there and see what's going on. There have been times where their ideation is so intense that I would either call the EMTs, but I tend to call parents, kind of include them in what's going on. Sometimes me and a counselor from the school will take the child to the ER and have the parents meet us. And so I try to coordinate and work with the school, with the families, and with the youth. So my hours are from 10 to 6. I think next year we're hoping to hire another mental health liaison. And I think the goal is to have 24-hour social workers in the PD. Next question. Have you seen changes in police behavior and understanding about mental illness since you began this position? Yeah, one of the things I've learned about the Iowa City, Iowa Police Department is that they want to learn. They want to be able to make changes. They want to be able to listen and learn about what is mental illness. All of our police officers in Iowa City, Iowa are CIT trained. And so they're kind of trained for a week on just kind of trying to recognize what is mental health. And so that also helps. But we all know police officers are not social workers and they know that. And so, there have been times when, officers have called me and asked me questions and said, hey, can you come out on this call with me? I think it's a mental health call. Sometimes I'll ride with them, sometimes I'll hop in my own car. And then sometimes they'll kind of, before our dispatch even gets to me, they'll let me know. And so I'll just get on dispatch and say, hey, I'm going to this particular address with officer so-and-so. But they really care about the people of Iowa City, Iowa. And so they want to do whatever they need to do in order to improve what they need to do and understanding about mental health. So another question, are you on call all the time? No, I'm only on call from 10 to 6, but during 10 to 6, yes, I am on call. Sometimes, like right now, I am out of service, which means I'm on duty, but out of service. And so officers know that, I'm not available at the moment. So somebody just mentioned loss in Project Lifesaver. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. I just couldn't remember. But yeah, so anytime a family member has a child who is autistic or an elderly with dementia, they can work with Lost in the Project Lifesaver, which basically is a free program for the families that kind of, if they walk out of the door and nobody knows where they are, they'll be able to help locate them. So another person sent me a question. How has your seminary training come in use? Are you involved with CIT training? So being in the seminary in my early 20s, I think taught me a lot about community. But being also in the seminary and learning about the crisis and the Catholic Church also taught me about sort of what trauma is and the effects of that trauma has. And I mean, now I can say that the Catholic Church doesn't really do a good job on you know, dealing with crisis and helping those individuals. But I would say, you know, being in community and seeing, you know, even when I was in seminary, seeing crisis and traumas kind of just helped me to learn what I do now, how important it is. Yeah.
We're at the end. I can't turn the speaker on. I just ask if any more people have questions.
Yeah, if anybody has any more questions, please keep it coming. I know a lot of people tell me that, you know, when they hear my life story and then what I do now, it's like totally different life aspects. My contact info, yes. So you know, I should know my work. Did I leave a let's see. Let's see my it's probably in my pocket. Let me see if I have the contact cards here. I think I do, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I should know my work cell phone number, but don't judge me, I don't. So if anybody would like to contact me, you know, just or have any questions about mental health or what community does, what other programs community crisis services and food bank has, or questions about the police department and what the police department does, I'd be, you know, more than happy to answer when it comes to mental health. So I do have a phone number, which I'll also type here. It's 319-383-4371.
Is that a cell number?
Yes, that is my work cell. And then also I have an email, which I would type right here. Let's see. Okay, so joachim.seelos@builtbycommunity.org. Somebody also has another question. Is there someone in this role for Johnson County? So for right now, we have my position in the Iowa City, Iowa Police Department. We have Kiana Pope, who is the mental health liaison for 3 departments, which is Coralville, North Liberty, and the Sheriff's Department. Kiana Pope is stationed though at the North Liberty office, but she handles the kind of the rural areas of kind of the Johnson County. We are in the process of interviewing and going to be hiring somebody for Iowa County. Is it Iowa County? I think I'm still learning about these certain counties. Okay. So, you know, slowly but surely things are coming in process. Any other questions? That's me. Are you replacing the other police liaison with NAMI? I actually don't know anything about this particular thing, so sorry, I don't know the answer to that. So somebody else had a question. What do you see in the future for this position? More of you? Yes. So I know in Iowa City, Iowa Police Department, they really want more of me. And the goal is to have a mental health liaison 24/7. And to also, in the future, have 2 mental health liaisons for every shift. So, and a day shift, an evening shift, and a night shift. Like I said, those type of things will definitely take some time. Another question, do you think small towns should train volunteer fire departments in mental health response? Absolutely. It doesn't matter if you're in a huge city or a small town. People are definitely in, people who are in mental health crisis need somebody that has some sort of experience or sort of know how to make those connections into giving them support. So volunteer fire departments definitely needs to have some training in mental health response, or at least able to help to recognize a mental health crisis. Another question, I had to meet with someone in my office and had to step out, but thank you for this presentation. You're welcome. Another question, how do we know when it's appropriate to request your services? For example, if a client at one of the service organizations like the shelter house is escalated and will not leave or calm down to the point where service staff would want to call in some kind of backup, is that an appropriate time to call you? Shelter house does a really great job in trying to de-escalate themselves when it comes to their clients. But there are times when they do need some assistance. And I think it's really appropriate to, if you need, call 911 and request for the mental health liaison. But we usually always have an officer with me. They may be waiting outside or they may be inside, but from a distance. But I would always try to be the first point of contact in working with the individual, then also working with the staff. And really is just trying to figure out, what is needed at that moment and how I can assist. But it's appropriate to request my services is when somebody is in an intense mental health crisis, and they kind of don't know how to get out of that crisis. Then it's always good to bring in a professional to come in and to, like I said, help de-escalate and to, see what more can be done for the individual.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How about somebody that's been dealing with mental illness, but they were working in a job and then something happened. There was some crisis, either with the employer or the individual, and they're not going to work anymore. So they're running out of money. Is there any counseling that you provide to help them or encourage them to try to go back to work or find a different job, or so that they can sustain themselves?
Yeah, when it comes to adults in mental health crisis or struggling with psychosis or, kind of any mental health illness, I'm always there to try to help talk with them and to support them and to maybe figure out why they're quitting their job or, what's kind of going on, what's the internal reason of all this. Sometimes I have clients who don't want to talk about it and they said they'll figure out themselves. And it's like, okay, well, you have my number, reach out to me if you want to talk. And sometimes if that's the path that they want to go, then I always try to give them those resources to where they can turn to. So if all of a sudden they don't have a place to live, I'll, work with Sam Brooks, who's the street outreach for Shelter House. And if you have not heard of Sam Brooks, I will tell you that he is an absolutely amazing person and does incredible work in Iowa City in outreach to our homeless folks. And then maybe just kind of trying to give him that extra support, like mobile crisis or, just kind of where he can turn to if he begins to struggle.
So who goes to shelter house?
People who go to shelter house are those who find themselves in a homeless situation. And then shelter house will work with the individuals to try to get them more services and even with housing. So they try to move the individual from homelessness to housing, and that's kind of like the goal. So yes, somebody else has another question. Substance use disorders and overdoses are rapidly taking up more and more of officers' resources. Do you carry Narcan, and do you respond to SUD crisis? Substance abuse disorders are very much rapid, not only in Iowa City, but it's all over. Of course, we know all over the country. So officers do respond to those type of situations. I personally do not carry Narcan. I never thought of that, but that could be a question for, community. That might be a question for community, as do mobile crisis or do the mental health liaisons carry that? But I do not. Usually our EMTs are very good at responding quick. And so sometimes before I even get to the scene, they're already there. If it's an overdose or a risk of death. So they get there as quick as possible. Even I've noticed the fire departments are really quick in response. Do you have any tips on how to recognize a mental health crisis for someone who has very little background in this area? Sometimes it could be very noticeable, and sometimes it's not. It's sort of like on the borderline, especially if somebody's in psychosis. But if somebody has a mental health crisis, it can be very much a death in a family, and somebody's very upset, or somebody's partner broke up with them, or somebody is all of a sudden evicted from their apartment or home, or they find themselves homeless, or it's a various reasons of what it may look like. But I mean, I can be in a crisis and not tell anybody, so it just depends on the situations. And it's kind of a challenge to, some of it is very recognizable. Sometimes it's just, it's not.
Is there a different reason to reach out to you as opposed to mobile crisis outreach?
So the responses that I do is more of intense mental health crisis that could have some safety issues. That's when I'm with officers. For somebody with a maybe for a mobile crisis, it could be a death in the family, or somebody found a family member dead in the home, and mobile crisis can come and work with the family to kind of give them the support while the police do what they do. Or somebody's just having suicidal ideations but no plan and no intent to really harm themselves, or somebody is cutting themselves. That is very, very minor. I've dealt with several people, several clients who have cut themselves, but really with no intention of any suicidalness. And so I think that's where you get people to understand that just because somebody cut themselves doesn't really mean that they want to die. It's just a kind of a relief of pain internally. And so, but sometimes I do have to go, and I'll ask them, can I see the cut? Or if it's too deep, then that's when I'll be like, hey, I think you really need to take you to the hospital, so that they could look at it. Sometimes if it's very minor, GuideLink is also an option where they can talk with a counselor, continue talks with the counselor, and there's always an EMT there at GuideLink, and so they can kind of just manage the wound And, and so continue that de-escalation. And then a lot of times I'll work with them too with a safety plan. And a safety plan could be, so for the rest of the afternoon, here's what we're going to do, or this is what you want to do. And then in the morning, I will call you to follow up in person. Or I know, like I said, it was kind of like in a nutshell. When I started this position, I really didn't know how much impact that, that people of Iowa City would have on me. And then also, how much of an impact I would have on them. And so absolutely grateful to be in this position. And I look forward to keep working with individuals. And if you would like to learn more about Community Crisis Services and Food Bank, please go on their website and please reach out to them. If you want to learn more about mobile crisis, again, please reach out to community. Jake Story is my manager, and he's absolutely incredible. If you have any questions more towards the police, when it comes about like mental health, Andrew McKnight, Sergeant Andrew McKnight, it's absolutely amazing to work with, and he has such a passion for those in mental health. So please feel free to reach out to him at the Iowa City Police Department if you have any more direct questions towards the Iowa City Police Department. But if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Always available to help anybody. And I try to work with organizations around Iowa City, and I've never had a moment of where I couldn't be helped or my questions couldn't be answered when it came to a lot of our organizations here in Iowa City. So that's one of the things I'm very proud that we have such strong organizations here. So.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Joa.
Yes,
Really
thank you.
appreciate you. And I just wanted to really repeat what I said in my chat, is that this is what real reform looks like. And it's, if we can just have more of you, but it's good news that we, North Liberty and Coralville, and what other city was it?
So the North Liberty, Coralville, and the Johnson County Sheriff's Department has their own mental health liaison.
Right. That's right.
Now. So yeah, so we're starting off. We're getting there.
Moving along. Well, thank you so much. And